Hey there, fellow sports gamblers. It's Steel Picks for you with the 5 best NBA playoff prize picks and Underdog free picks for today, April 29th. Before we get into today's picks, let's see what happened to us yesterday. Paul George went out of his mind, had 9 rebounds and 7 assists. He never does that. Almost twice as much as the 8.5 rebounds and assists we said he'd go under. Kudos to the Philadelphia 76ers for pushing it to a Game 6. Didn't think they had it in them. Jaylen Brown wanted to get the others involved for some reason, dishing out 5 assists, a half assist over the 4.5 we said he'd go under. Jalen Johnson had 18 points and 6 assists, just below the 26.5 points and assists we said he'd go under. And Derek White came through for us once again, the cash cow, with 6 points, 1 rebound, and 3 assists to go under the 8.5 rebounds and assists we said he'd go under, and the 21 points, rebounds, and assists we said he'd go under. 3 out of 5 is not terrible, but nowhere near the immaculate ticket we strive for. So let's see if we can't make it happen today. First off, we have Cade Cunningham under 38.5 points and assists. Now, fellow sports gamblers, make no mistake about it, I do think that Cade Cunningham is a superstar. And I do think that superstars almost never have back-to-back terrible games in the playoffs. Cade was 7 for 23 from the field and 3 for 11 from the three-point line last game. This game is going to be at home, so he definitely will have some momentum on his side. The crowd will be behind him. However, I think it will be more of a defensive struggle. And if we go into the stats and analytics a little bit further, we see that he really has not been doing that since game 1. That is going over the 38.5 points and assists. In game 1, he had 39. He went off his first game back in quite some time. It was marvelous. He looked like the superstar we all think that he is. But in the last 3 games, 27, 27, and 25, only 1 game with double-digit assists. That was game 3, and he barely scratched the surface there, the 38. Not going over the 38.5. See how Vegas can be at times. That half point, always the dreaded half point. 27 and 25 in games 3 and 4. And not a lot of assists. So I definitely think that Cade Cunningham is capable of having a monster game with regards to points and assists. But I think it will be a little bit under this 38.5, mostly because I think it will be a defensive struggle. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think Detroit is going to win the game fairly easily. And Cade Cunningham is not going to have to play a whole lot of minutes in the fourth quarter. Of course, as we can see, he's been playing as many minutes as, is necessary, roughly about 35.5. 40 in game 1, 37 in game 2, 41.2 in game 3, 38.9 in game 4. He's been getting to the free throw line pretty consistently. It's been increasing, as you can see. 11 in the first game, that was the anomaly. And then 8, 9, and 10 in games 2, 3, and field goals. He's definitely been taking a lot of them, but not shooting very accurately in the last 2 games. 35% in game 3 and 30% in game 4. So I definitely think that he will have a much better game than he had in game 4, but I just don't think he's going to go over that 38.5 points and assists. As you can see, Prizepicks likes this as well, as they have him at the minus 119. That's how we're going to get things started. The next up is the Prince of the 206, Paolo Banchero, under 34.5 points, rebounds, and assists. I definitely think that the Detroit defense is going to make it a point to keep Paolo in check. As you can see in games 1 and 3, those were his big games. The first game he came out like gangbusters with his first game at home. He came out with a 25, 12, and 9, although did not shoot very well from the field. And then in game 4, well below the 34.5 points, rebounds, and assists that we say he will go under. And as a friendly reminder, although this is not the regular season, during the regular season, the Detroit Pistons are 3rd in points allowed, 3rd in rebounds allowed, and number 1 in assists allowed. So it may be a difficult night for Paolo, especially considering that the Detroit Pistons are down 3-1, and this is a must-win game to avoid elimination. I definitely think that they're going to do their best to contain Paolo Banchero, and he's going to have a tough night of it. Hope I'm wrong from a personal standpoint because he is a prince of the 206, but as a fellow sports gambler, I'm just going to have to go the other way with this and say that he's going to go under the 34.5 points, rebounds, and assists. As you can see, Novig likes this as well, as they have him at minus 116. Next up, we have his teammate, Desmond Bane, under 7.5 points and assists. As you can see, since the first game where he came out with the 6 and the 5, he has been well below that with the 4 rebounds, 2 assists in game 2, the 7 rebounds, no assists in game 3, and the 5 rebounds and 1 assist in game 4. So 1.5 assists a game. That certainly helps our efforts here with the under 7.5 rebounds and assists. Again, the Detroit Pistons on the regular season don't allow a whole lot of rebounds, don't allow a whole lot of assists. The minutes we don't really have to pay a whole lot of attention to because he will be out there as long as he's needed. Of course, as I have predicted, I think the Detroit Pistons run away with this one. If they don't, there will be some heads that will be rolling. But I definitely think that Desmond Bane won't be the reason that they don't win the game, because I don't think that he's going to contribute that heavily with regards to rebounds and assists. As we can see in the last 3 games, 4 rebounds, 7 rebounds, 5 rebounds. So not necessarily taking him all that seriously on the boards. With regards to potential assists, he had a few, didn't really make that many, and he has failed to exceed 7.5 rebounds and assists in 7 of his last game versus top defenses for rebounds allowed, which the Detroit Pistons are. So I definitely think that the moment is going to overwhelm him a tad bit. They will feel much better trying to close the series out at Orlando, adverse at Detroit, where Detroit is in must-win desperation mode. I definitely think that Detroit is going to come out with their best defensive game plan, and Desmond Bane and Paolo Banchero are going to have a tough time, but we're focusing on Desmond Bane right now. Under 7.5 rebounds and assists. As you can see, Sleeper likes this as well at the minus 149. And as a friendly reminder, when you sign up with BETR using my promo code WINCASH, you'll receive 2 anytime tokens worth up to $100 each. And when you sign up with Novig using my STEELEWINS promo code and spend $5, you'll get a $50 bonus, which will definitely come in handy when it's time to start making these sports prop bets. Good luck to everyone getting that cash and making extra things happen. Next up, we have Brandon Ingram under 24.5 points and rebounds. Now, on my clock, I definitely think that Brandon Ingram has been one of the biggest disappointments of the playoffs so far. I definitely thought that his second taste of the playoffs, he would definitely be more of a focal point, more of a factor, definitely getting into his game, getting into his rhythm, getting into his range. We have not really seen that from Brandon Ingram. There was a little bit of an explosion in game 4. He did have the 23 and the 6. But if you look at the first 3 games, 17 points, 2 rebounds. The second game, 7 points, 4 rebounds. The third game, 12 and 3. Certainly not what we were expecting or anticipating from Brandon Ingram. And I think that on the road in a game 5, where the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to want to take the momentum back from this series, they were up 2-0 and let 2 games slide in Toronto. I don't think that they're going to allow Brandon Ingram to be a factor in this game. If Scotty Barnes wants to come through, if RJ Barrett wants to come through, that's fantastic. But I certainly don't think that it's going to be Brandon Ingram, just given his body language. And the first 3 games, he just certainly wasn't there. The 4th game, he showed up for a little bit, but I don't think that he can sustain that momentum. I definitely think that he's going to be less than a contributing factor to whether they win or lose. I think that he's just kind of happy to be there. And I don't want to say deer in the headlights, because I certainly thought that Brandon Ingram was capable of a bit more. He just has not been able to show it so far in this playoff series. It hasn't been because of minutes on the floor. As you can see, game 1, 36.1, 35.9 in game 2. A little bit under in game 3 with the 29. Came back with the 35 in game 4. Not really getting to the line in the first 2 games. The first game he actually did get to the line 10 times. Game 2, no free throw attempts. Game 3 only had 2. Game 4, he was a little bit more aggressive, kind of what we were expecting and anticipating. Of course, that's the high water mark for what he's been able to do in the playoffs so far, but I don't expect him to be able to replicate that. He's been getting off a few shots. Again, wow, 23 in game 4. Don't know where all of this came from. but I don't expect him to continue that trend. Going to the free throw line again in game 4, much more aggressive, doing his thing. But game 5 on the road is certainly a different animal. And as you can see in his first 2 games on the road, he only had 17-2, 7-4. So definitely think that the under 24.5 points and rebounds is the thing that's going to happen. As you can see, Novig likes it as well at the -130. And last but not least, this is kind of a funny one, fellow sports gamblers. Stick with me on this one. Did not realize until I did the research. James Harden over 3.5 turnovers. Now, James Harden, being the point guard that he is, typically doesn't turn the ball over at this high of a rate. But in this playoff series, look at this. We have 4 in game 1, 5 in game 2, 8 in game 3, and again, 7 in game 4. Good Lord, twice as many as we're saying he'll go over in his last 2 games. So not quite sure where the ball security has come from. And again, if we look at the numbers here, we see turnovers forced. The Toronto Raptors are number 4 in the league with regards to that. So maybe that's why. And I just hadn't been paying attention until I got on Outlier and found out these statistics. So James Harden definitely has not had a lot of ball security recently. That's kind of a question mark. Not quite sure what that's about, but it is what it is. He's certainly going to play enough minutes to turn the ball over more times than not. And he's exceeded, like I said before, 3.5 turnovers in 5 straight games versus top 10 defenses for turnovers forced, which the Toronto Raptors are. So kind of a weird pick for us, but we're going to say that James Harden is going to turn the ball over more than 3.5 times. So to recap, we have Cade Cunningham under 38.5 points and assists. Paolo Banchero under 34.5 points, rebounds, and assists. Brandon Ingram under 24.5 points and rebounds. James Harden over 3.5 turnovers. And Desmond Bane under 7.5 rebounds and assists. In addition, the ticket I put together is Desmond Bane under that 7.5 rebounds and assists. Brandon Ingram under that 24.5 points and rebounds. And Cade Cunningham under the 38.5 points and assists. That's the 5 picks I have for you today. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the Steel Picks for You channel. And good luck, everyone.